according to Graham Greene, a writer writes, and that is the definition. And I partly agree in the sense that I do meet people who regard themselves as writers or want to be writers, and they don't write. And as with all creative enterprises, the point is the thing. The point is the thing that you create. It is not an existential position to be creative and not create. That doesn't work. So key to being a writer is that they write. Whether they're any good or not is another matter. And of course there must be unfinished masterpieces, and there are certainly many books that have been finished that shouldn't have been. So the writer that writes, there is no judgment of quality. I mean, this is self-evident. But why do we write? Why does someone want to write? Why does someone go through what I find to be a deeply painful and unpleasant experience in writing? I was thinking about this earlier. I think that it is inherent in us, that it is an instinct in us to mimic that which we love. It is certainly true, I think, with children and their parents, however you want to characterize that kind of love. But I think that the first impulse is to mimic what we love. And I remember that, the first band I was in when I was, 12, 13, we just used to play Stranglers covers. And I think people join bands to be like the people that they admire and love. And it's only once one has gone through that process of mimicking and finding it unsatisfying that we discover that there is a creative urge in us. So what gets us to the point of discovering the creative urge is mimicking and being unsatisfied. And I can remember very clearly that that I started writing because I wanted to mimic Dostoevsky. I think I've spoken about this in a previous video. I'd read 2 or 3 novels by Dostoevsky in my mid-teens, and I just wanted to be someone who wrote like that. I just wanted, no, not even something, just I wanted to. And I remember I just wrote paragraph after paragraph, or the opening paragraph many times to a book, which was essentially the beginning of Crime and Punishment, again and again and again. But somehow one transcends that because you can't mimic it, you know, unless I was to do, a kind of a really straight cover version of Crime and Punishment, which would essentially be writing the thing out again, a bit like that Borges story. Sooner or later, the writing takes a life of its own. And it is when one discovers that bit that you either carry on or you stop. And I keep meeting writers who don't finish things, and the reason is because they stop, because they come across and they cannot get over, I think, the fundamental point in writing, which is around 10 to 20,000 words, maybe a bit more. You are essentially building a pier over the sea without any support, and that's what it feels like. It feels like an absurd enterprise, and you feel sick. Or actually, that's not a pier. It is a pier over a cliff, because there is a vertiginous feeling for the first 20,000 words, because you're essentially, so it's like building an invisible, unsupported pier off a cliff's edge for about 30,000 words. And the moment you get past that, the thing itself, you find the thing itself has found its support and is beginning to is beginning to reveal itself, and it becomes kind of solid. But before that, it is a horrendous feeling, and people stop because the horrendous feeling kind of becomes the feeling of the kind of vertiginous feeling. Essentially, become you. Sorry, I'm not making sense here. What happens is you mistake it for a kind of inauthenticity, for a lack of legitimacy in what you're writing, as though what you're writing is built upon nothing and therefore has no reality or something. That's what it feels like. And at the same time, it feels as though what you're writing is stupendously awful and stupid and the writing of an idiot child. I mean, I remember being in my mid to late 30s and thinking what I'm writing could have been written by an idiot child. It may still be the case, but it got published. But that's what it feels. And if it doesn't feel like that, one thinks you must be doing something wrong, because it is a huge act of faith to create something out of nothing. Well, of course it is. It's, creation ex nihilo. It's, we are acting like gods. It used to be the way I used to think about art and crafts would be that making something out of something is being a crafts person, and making something out of nothing is being an artist. But actually I've changed that. I think that art is something that people confer on a craft when it transcends its form. That's neither here nor there. But anyway, just a thought. So to write, I feel the reason I do that, the reason I experience that vertiginous feeling, the reason I doubt myself, the reason I think it's a pointless vomit-making enterprise, is that, and this is where I think is really crucial, is my brain spontaneously orders sentences in my head when I'm going about my business. One second. This is a stupendous white wine from Spain. £18 a bottle. Yeah, so it's almost a will-less enterprise on my behalf. I don't know whether it's become habit, or that's what I would have done. Sorry, it's part of my phone. I will stop this for a second. Okay. Sorry about the interruption. I don't know where we were. Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, I suppose I was talking about this idea that my mind thinks in sentences. It orders sentences while I go about my business, whether it's habit or not. Given I've been writing now semi-seriously for 30 years, did I do that at the beginning? I don't know, but certainly I am driven to look at the world and want to render it in the way that I see it. I was watching Stalker last night, Tarkovsky's extraordinarily weird and mesmerizing and disturbing and menacing, but strangely entrancing and beautiful film. And I noticed that when we come out after the first 15 minutes or 20 minutes, we come out of the sepia beginning and go into the zone. That there is a the kind of color palette is something I really recognize, and I think that's kind of what people who want to create art do, is that they want to create or render a color palette that others feel makes sense to them as an expression of the world. And that expression of the world is going to be one that doesn't, and this is a fairly kind of Heideggerian notion, isn't always in the clearing that we all see. It is what when we catch ourselves a glimpse of the world as we feel that it is in itself. That's what we want to render into music or prose or painting. And the reason we do it is, as I think that's what I was trying to say, is that we know it's not how the world is being seen by us all at the same time. There is a sort of veil across the world as we go about our business again. And the artist says actually there is that I can tear a small rip in that material, and I will write what I see through that tear, because occasionally we do glimpse the world beyond the veil, as it were. And I think Tarkovsky is brilliant at that. And in many ways, it's the enterprise of poetry that's best does that in kind of word form, but novel prose writing can do it as well. And I think that's what makes me a writer. Well, obviously I write, and two, that I think the reason I write is a legitimate one. You know, I don't want to be a writer. I don't hang out with writers. It's that there is a reason, I think, which someone once said to me, that they thought I had a chance of being successful because they thought I had a story to tell. Now, of course, what does that mean? Does that mean, you know, there is within me a set of characters that embody a particular set of dynamics that is a story, which is ultimately a story, or I have a kind of phenomenological position by which anything can be told, and will feel real and meaningful and valid, because I am privileged to have a tear in the fabric with which to look through. I don't know. But I don't know if that answers the question. But yeah, thank you for listening.